Should I mention my lung condition before a first date? I'm 32, and I suffer from cystic fibrosis, CF. CF is a genetic condition that affects several parts of the body, but especially the lungs. The symptoms include persistent, noisy coughing and generally chronic congestion. I have been dating causally during the last few months. My city has been in and out of lockdowns over the last couple of years, but restaurants and bars are currently allowed to open at half capacity. Is it prudent to bring up my condition prior to a first date? My reasoning for doing so is that I do not want my date to feel uncomfortable or scared, in light of the pandemic, by my respiratory symptoms. I'm not constantly coughing or gagging, but it's persistent enough to be noticeable, and I have witnessed strangers move away from me on buses and subways. On the other hand, I feel that it is kind of a heavy thing to bring up before I ever meet someone in person. It's likely that I would disclose it anyway if the relationship went somewhere, but I find it a tricky balance to hit. So far, I have been trying to gauge each interaction on its own and see what the vibe is, but I wonder whether it is sensible to have a general policy in place for everyone. Too long did not read. Have a condition that makes me cough a lot. Should I let first dates know that ahead of meeting for the first time? I agree with the others. Just a little text that says, by the way, I might be coughing tonight, but it's not COVID, I have cystic fibrosis. I dated someone with CF. We met through mutual friends. I already knew he had it, but he didn't bring it up until our third date. It's a heavy thing that has a lot of implications, and I think you should probably let people know before the first date. I dated my guy despite it, and I stayed with him until he passed away as the result of it. There are people out there for you. I have 2 kids with CF, 18 male and 13 male. Neither of them give anyone anything. One of my son's friends who have lived with us for the last few months didn't even know my oldest had anything. They are just more private about it. But it's completely up to you. Heavy or not, it's you and it's true. I think if you're apologetic about it, it gives her a cue to look down in pity on you. But if you are just like, hey, just so you don't think I'm dying, I have a chronic condition that makes me cough, when it acts up it means I like you more. JK. Move on. She'll take your lead. It accomplishes the same thing without a heavy talk, and will give her the opportunity to bring it up comfortably later. I have epilepsy, and on my first date with my now soon-to-be wife, I told her that, I have epilepsy, so if it looks like I've spaced out it's not because I'm bored, I'm probably just having a seizure, haha. I felt it was important to say something on that first date, but it felt more comfortable for me to do it in a light-hearted way, so it's entirely up to you. I say to perhaps prioritize what makes you feel comfortable on the date. Hey, 35 years old CFER here. When I was dating I didn't say much till after first date when things started to get more serious. I've not really had anyone really reject me because of my CF. Now with Trikafta I come across much more normal, less cough etc. anyway. Been with my current boyfriend for 2 years now, met on Tinder, zany face grin. I'd tell them maybe on the first date or on. This is a tough question to be honest, with no real right answer. My ex had CF but I knew prior to the first date, but I had already fallen in love with her before I knew how serious the complications were. Yay, cause otherwise they may think you have the COVID. I'm disabled and have a service dog. I don't state what my disability is on any dating profiles, but I do state that I'm disabled and that my dog will be with me. I also state that my condition is unpredictable and I may have to cancel with short notice. I literally say nothing unless I cough and they look worried. Then I just smile and say, not COVID. Just bad lungs. I don't disclose my medical issues to strangers. It's not their business. Just bring it up during the date, maybe towards the beginning. Is better of being ourselves most cause we don't know who we are going to end up with. Isn't CF the condition where you can't date someone else with CF? Or you can, obviously, but it increases your risk exponentially. I think based on that alone I would want to disclose to be sure they don't have it too. However, if you don't feel comfortable, before you go on the actual first date, say something like, my allergies are acting up today, good thing it's not COVID. Then they won't be looking at you sideways the whole time. I wouldn't mention it before you meet someone. I would try to make sure it comes up in conversation around the time or before you have your first coughing fit. For the chance of serious relationship you should definitely tell this early. It's hereditary condition that also affects fertility and your date might want to know that kids are basically off the table. It's only fair. I have a chronic illness. I'm in a relationship now, but previously I always told people because otherwise they might turn up sick and make me sick when I'm immunosuppressed. Plenty of illnesses that your date could have besides COVID. And because it meant I didn't have to waste time going on dates with people who turned out to be ableist. I don't have CF, but I have some cold, flu symptoms is my norm. And I always mention those symptoms to people because I don't know their health. They might be immunocompromised and I don't know. Or they might just be really careful about not getting colds even if they are healthy. And I don't want them to be anxious about being near me because I look sick when I'm not contagious. So I would advise you tell them in advance. Hey, so I have CF too, and I usually will bring it up in conversations if not before the first time I meet someone, but that's just me. You can even do it vaguely and say you have a chronic cough from a condition you have and you don't have COVID. Everyone with CF does it differently. One of my friends somehow hid it for months lol. Anyone not wanting to move forward isn't worth it in my opinion. Yeah, totally bring it up, and phrase it just like you did here. That you don't want them to think you have COVID and have a chronic condition that causes a lot of coughing. A good man, woman will understand. Tough one to answer. Personally, it would make absolutely no difference, but I'm sure some people would be concerned that it would impact your relationship. Either because they are narrow-minded, or because they'd be concerned for the risks to you. Life is for living, go with your gut feeling. From someone who wishes they'd done that a long time ago. I like yourself have CF and I don't bring it up until after the first date. The way I look at it is no point in getting deep into the topic with someone who you might never see again, and if the first date goes well and we're still talking and looking to see each other again, then I'll let them know. There are the odd occasion when chatting I have brought it up when it felt right as we had been talking for weeks beforehand, but that's rare and I tend to stick to my rule. Just so you know, I have a bit of cough, but it's not COVID or a flu. Just an individual response I going on. You certainly don't need to. And honestly, feeling your way through is probably better than having a strict policy. It's just probably a good idea. You don't need to get into it in a heavy way, and leaving someone with the impression it's allergies or air quality thing until you get to know each other a bit better seems fine to me. Put it in your profile. You definitely want people to know that in addition to not worrying about your cough, they need to take COVID seriously for your sake. I always do. I'd rather not waste my time with someone who is unable to handle my lung disease and get it out of the way immediately. Just a thought is people with CF aren't supposed to be around each other. Personally, I'd be on the side of disclosure in advance, on the, admittedly vanishing, chance that your potential date may also have it. Or perhaps that's just too paranoid. I have a semi-visible disability. I say semi-visible because the key symptom is noticeable if you're paying attention, but also easily misinterpretable as something other than disability. I have a condition that causes eye tremors. If I don't disclose, I'm always risking people assuming that I'm very nervous, or that I'm substance affected. I would always rather have them know what is actually going on with me than have them assume and speculate, so I disclose freely and often. I don't think it's a heavy topic, it's a baseline part of my reality, and I want people to know who I am, not what they might incorrectly guess about me. I think it might be worth truly examining why it feels like too heavy a topic in your view to bring up early. What concerns do you have about early disclosure? I have a condition, disability that is apparent if you know it's there, but if you don't then I just look like a jerk or like something is off. I have a fake eye. I look like I'm totally ignoring people to my left, and in the right circumstances you can tell it's fake. And from experience my policy is to tell people up front because if they don't like it they can bounce. Yes, it's heavy news, and yes, some people find it unattractive, but if they're weirded out then at least I can know and thin them out. My partner now I told on the first date and it was never a problem because my partner just never minded. Stuff like this should go in your dating profile. Any deal breakers went there. My tattoos, my sailor swearing and the fact I don't want kids were on my profile. That way it doesn't have to be a big serious reveal and conversation before the first date, but they already know and are cool with it. I had a partner with CF, so I understand what you mean and how it sounds. With COVID still being so important to be concerned about, absolutely tell them up front so they're not worried they're about to contact it. You don't need to get into what CF is, but I'd say, just a heads up, I have a condition that makes me cough frequently, but it isn't contagious and it definitely isn't COVID. It's just cystic fibrosis, I was born with it, no biggie. Just wanted you to know before you hear it. Just say, hey, I have a condition that makes me cough a lot. Wanted to give you a heads up that I'm not contagious or anything. I'm really glad my partner disclosed their CF on our first date. I did not understand all the medication and sanitizing until they explained. We have been dating for 2.5 years. I assume you were meeting these people online. Just put it on your profile. BTW, I have CF but I'm fully vaccinated, assuming you are. So if we meet and I start coughing, it's CF not COVID lol. Bonus, you'll filter out the unvaccinated who you may not want to be around right now either due to your condition. I would message a link which explains in short and covers 1. What cystic fibrosis is, 2. If it is contagious or not. The timing of the message is probably after meeting in restaurant, after first cough. But before leaving the restaurant. Then say verbally I have this condition and it is not COVID or contagious. I just thought you should know.